Recording on. May I have permission to record? Kim, Ruben,
Yes,
and Tommaso
Yes.
Gelin.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So we're meeting to discuss the drawings for the patents. We've got several drawings from Tommaso now of freeway flow and managing freeway flow around a clover leaf. We have drawings to do of non-standard highway interchanges, non-cloverleaf interchanges. We have drawings to do of surface street traffic flow management. We probably should get a traffic engineer involved, but we keep dragging our feet on deciding which software package is best for actually illustrating these things, and then finding somebody who's expert in using that package so that we can bring them on board to help provide us with videos and things that are and animations, but more for investors than for the patents, because obviously the patents we can't supply any video. Is that right, Kim?
yeah. Let me give both of you a short update on the patent progress so far. Can I do that?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so I've written quite a bit on the specification, and in a couple days, like by Friday, I'm going to give that to you to review, Bruce, and you can forward that to Tommaso for him to review at your discretion. I've used all of Tommaso's drawings so far, except for the one called Cloverleaf Intersection, Scenario A. Okay.
Okay.
So, Tommaso, your drawings were good enough for the most part. They were excellent for patent use. I mean, formatting is a little different than I usually do, but I just am going to use yours as is. It keeps the cost down. It's fine.
Okay.
Work. I've done a couple additional drawings on my own, and so that's where we're at. So my recommendation is don't change any of the existing drawings, except this one called Scenario A, which I haven't started using yet.
You mean this one?
Yes, correct.
I'm sharing now. Okay. Bruce, can you explain this to Kim and to me too?
Sure. Just pop it back up again as their primary. I guess you have to. Let's see. How do I screen share that and lock it in?
You don't need to screen share. We know what it is.
Well, I kind of need to look at it in order to describe it.
Okay.
You probably can't see my cursor, can you?
No.
Okay.
If you want, you can screen share your screen, your entire screen, and
Right.
then I will see your.
Right. Thank you.
If you open the drawing in your computer and not using the my screen share, it's better.
Then you can see my cursor. Can you see my cursor now? I'm sliding the cursor along the top of.
Yes, I can see it.
You can see it
Okay.
sliding along the top row. Okay, so this is a very compressed in the x in the y dimension, but normal. It's 1 to 20, at least is sort of the idea, with the crossing freeway flows. So one freeway is it actually looks like more like 1 to 4 in terms of the freeway widths. But the idea here is to show this block, which is the platoon of conventional cars with the gaps. And actually, we need to fill this diagram out a little bit. But basically, the idea is that there be gaps that are probably up to 1,000 feet or so between the platoons of cars, conventional cars. And these move, and they continuously move right past the intersection. So the diagrams that Tommaso showed before, where the edges align with the exit and entrance ramps, that's that's only a passing occurrence. Because for the most part, the entering and exiting traffic uses the rightmost lane to accelerate up to speed, find the gap and cross over, or in the case of conventional traffic, join the conventional flow in lanes 2 or 3 in this case. So lane 4 is generally kept open for entering and exit traffic, and is free flowing, although probably not at the speed limit, just because of the risk of somebody pulling out of the conventional traffic flow into the traffic that's moving down the right-hand lane. So the speed, if it's stop and go in the middle lanes, the right-hand lane may be limited to say 40 miles an hour or 35 or something. But the platoon here, which actually would extend across 2 lanes of conventional cars, which is moving at whatever the flow rate can support, has got within it these conventional cars. Now there's 2 ways to do the flow inside of these platoons. One is to do what's called pulse and glide, which is the most efficient, especially for vehicles that have idle engine cutoff. And with the pulse and glide, they would all glide to a point where they're all lined up tight like this, and then they would pulse again with the front vehicle taking off and the second vehicle taking off shortly after that. And then they would spread out like this, as we see on the third actually bar, and the fourth bar, and then they would go back into neutral and glide to a stop again. That's not obviously the mode that people use today to drive. It's one that could be enabled when you have intelligence about what's happening with the flow down the road and you want to maximize fuel economy. There's another mode that we should also show in the pattern diagrams, which would be more conventional, which is where the cars simply are given a speed to travel. They're kept in blocks, so they're separate. They leave the gap. There are still gaps between them, but they just travel at a fairly constant speed in a fairly tight formation, that takes a little more driver attention to the longitudinal positioning, and of course, it doesn't have the same fuel economy as the pulse and glide has potentially. But it may be the mode in which everybody drives anyway, in a hot summer's day or when it's bitterly cold, because you need to keep the engine running then anyway, in which case the pulse and glide fuel economy advantages are lost. So this diagram needs, Tommaso, some addition, because really we're showing a block of the platoons, and they'd be occupying both lanes 2 and 3 in this case, probably, unless the exit that's upcoming is a 2 lanes exiting, in which case both lanes 3 and 4 are probably in a bigger highway if they're 2 lanes exiting, would be available or be involved in the exit and entrance ramps for a big interchange with 2 lanes.
Let me interrupt for just
exiting.
a second. We need, for the pattern, we need simpler diagrams, and we can use as many as possible. So the level of simplicity that's good is what Tommaso has done on the others so far.
Yeah.
I think you may be trying to show too many things. The other thing is you don't need to show every option. For example, 2 exit lanes. No reason to have a drawing for 2 exit lanes. Unless there's something just dramatically different about the way they're going to be handled.
Well, you mentioned that the patent office is getting much more discerning about specificity and requiring a high degree of specificity. So I was imagining at least that we would actually we might file a provisional before we've got all the algorithms locked down, but that we would actually be filing the algorithms for controlling the traffic. Well,
that's right. That would be exceedingly helpful in terms of patentability and validity to provide more detailed algorithms. But sort of obvious extensions, like going from 1 to 2 hot lanes, going from 1 to 2 exit lanes, unless there's some really important change to the algorithm, you can just put a note in the text about how that happens. The critical part of the patent is sort of Claim 1 and how the limitations in Claim 1 are related to each other. Once you start adding more stuff past that, the only real advantage of those sort of extra features is if you can't get Claim 1. In other words, if the patent office's view, or possibly in a court, is that Claim 1 is not sufficiently novel. Well, but what's important to understand is that if Claim 1 is not novel, okay, you're not going to get Claim 1. And you add an obvious feature in a later claim, like, for example, 2 exit lanes. Okay, you're not going to get that either. Okay, if claim 1 is valid, then all of the other claims are irrelevant. They have no legal value. Okay, so what that means is, if you think about those two things, what it means is that adding obvious limitations to higher numbered claims essentially has no value. Okay?
Okay.
So it's worth discussing some of them in the specification, but it's not worth sticking them in claims if they're essentially obvious extensions.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let me just
Yeah.
recap. So you claim 1, of course, you have to be well founded and not claimed by anybody else.
Right. So, for example, suppose in claim 1 you have something that says wireless connectivity. Okay? And then claim 2, you say, well, wireless connectivity is Bluetooth. And then claim 3, the wireless connectivity is Wi-Fi. Claim 4, wireless connectivity is cell phone. Those claims have no value, right? Because those Wi-Fi protocols are obvious.
They're obvious. They're all wireless extensions.
So
of
if you're
wireless,
not going to get claim 1, you're not going to get 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you are going to get claim 1, those don't add anything at all.
So in this case, what's our claim 1 likely to be?
Right. They're useful in the spec because they provide very specific demonstrations of what wireless protocol is. So it helps in enablement and helps define the bounds, but not in claims. And the only thing you have to have drawings for is the claims. Okay, so for example, if we're not going to put 2 exit lanes in a claim, which doesn't really do us much, then we don't need 2 exit lanes in a drawing. And, frankly, the smaller the patent is, the fewer the drawings it has, the better job you can do, the less it costs.
Okay, just make it general enough. So in this case, where do you think our I guess we really won't know until we've done the patent search as to what what claims we can make that are
what's going to be important is to really define how these platoons and particularly the gaps work, right? I mean, sort of the essence of this is that you're going to be using platoons with gaps in order to use the gap in order for HOT qualified vehicles to enter and exit the HOT lane efficiently, right? That's the essence of this novelty.
Okay.
So for that, we need drawings that basically show, how the platoons are created, how the gap is created, and how it's used. And my view right now is that we've got that sort of drawings 1 through 8 or figures 1 through 8 that Tommaso's done, though, both an excellent and adequate job of explaining how those are formed. In fact, there's probably a couple extra figures in there, but since he's done them, there's no reason to try to eliminate them.
Okay.
I mean, what do you think, Tommaso? I mean, you think those sort of figures 1 through 8 adequately describe the essence of creating gaps and using them?
Yeah, I think so, because they're very general, very, very clear. This one, in my opinion, it's not very necessary.
So what I would like to see is a cloverleaf. And, it has to be 1-to-1. It can't be 20-to-1. But it can be much simpler than what's shown there. And I think the purpose of the cloverleaf drawing would be to really show how the gap moves through the cloverleaf. So, what you might do is draw a very simplified cloverleaf in kind of a figure A, B, and C. 10A, 10B, and 10C. 10A has the gap before the cloverleaf. 10B has the gap at the cloverleaf. 10C has the gap after the cloverleaf. And you don't even need to show any vehicles going in or out of the gap because we've already got that. And that just makes it very clear that the gap is moving. I mean, you guys think that's a good choice?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, that's basically what we needed to illustrate, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And you can even use fewer cars for that. You can have, 3 cars a gap and 3 cars, something like that, or 4 gap and 4. Just enough so somebody can say, oh, there's the gap. And in any case, we're going to have little numbers going to it, which are actually called reference designators, just like you did before.
Yeah, and show that by and large, there's a good amount of travel in the right lane before exiting or after entering in order to access the gap or to get from the gap to the ramp.
Yeah. Yeah, pack the cars together reasonably tightly, and the gap is, 8 car lengths or something, or 10, that's adequate. There's not only is there no reason to show scale in a patent drawing, you're actually not allowed to show scale in a patent drawing, believe it or not.
Okay.
And it has to do with the fact that scale is not a patentable attribute.
Okay. Well, in that case, you don't really have to show you can't show the full gap length without using a roll of paper.
Right. Now, in the specification, we do have to give a gap length range, but not in the drawings.
Okay, good. All right. So
there's a lot of obscure crap in writing patents.
Okay. So that's pretty good and clear. And then the other thing to differentiate is the movement within the platoon of conventional cars, as to whether they're under pulse and glide regime or whether they're just constant speed regime. And
well, I really like the 2 figures or 3 that Tommaso did with a little cell phone or display or pad, giving instructions. I mean, I thought that was very clear. And I don't think we need a drawing that sort of shows a platoon tightening up or lengthening. I mean, I think that's very obvious. And the instructions to the driver, I think that's kind of important. And we've got that.
Okay. I have to go back and review Tommaso's drawings of the user interface. I did not look at that closely.
And remember, we're not going to be patenting the user interface itself. We just sort of need to show what it looks like, particularly, the implementation of your pulse and glide, which he's got.
Okay. Or alternatively, just near steady speed. But yeah.
Right. So, that's right. So maybe, Tommaso, you add one more of those drawings, which has like 40 miles per hour and then maintain speed or something.
Yeah.
Because, these are essentially giving people a change instruction, do something different. And for constant speed, it'd be nice to give them a different picture. And I would use a different layout, so it's really clear they're not being given an instruction to change. Maybe just a horizontal line or a little vertical arrow, or you're going to do a better job than I will. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, clear.
What I had thought we would do here actually is show the lanes that are available on the road at that point, and then indicate which ones are conventional car allowed, which ones are hot lane, and then of course show the vehicle type. Although, as to whether the driver actually probably doesn't have to do anything with the app to actually use the hot lane, they could just go into it and then have their speed detected and then start getting charged for it. So,
right, exactly. Now, let me ask a question about what you just said. When you talk about showing the different lanes and their purpose, did you mean a plan view of a road, or did you mean instructions on the driver display?
It's a construction on the driver display which just shows the number of all the lanes that are on the road at that point, the car's position in those lanes, and then which lanes are HOT and which are just non-tolled.
So, so I'd like to include that, but not for the reason you think. For the reason you think is it's just sort of a handy feature and is not really part of the patent, okay? However, one of the things that you and I have discussed in the past is that I think it's going to be technologically difficult, at least for the next 5 or 10 years, to have a rock-solid knowledge of what lane people are in, okay? I mean, probably not with self-driving cars, with autonomous vehicles, but I think with an inexpensive retrofit, it's going to be hard to get absolute information. And so an advantage of that display is it shows what lane the vehicle thinks it's in.
Right, and well, of course,
arguably that could be confusing if the driver thinks he's in lane 3 and the car thinks he's in lane 2, or more importantly, driver thinks he's not in an HOT lane and the display is showing that he is in an HOT lane. But the reason is that I want to discuss this issue of not knowing exactly whether or not, not knowing with a very high degree of accuracy, 99.999% accuracy, which lane vehicles are in. And therefore, I want to talk about that in the spec. And so having a picture showing that makes it a lot easier to talk about that.
Yeah. As far as actually deriving that information, I'm thinking that the camera on these smartphones will be forward-facing and will be able to...
Oh, you're absolutely right. And I've actually already described 9 separate ways to determine which lane you're in, including that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, I think we could have pretty good accurate lane information and lane positioning information from that, especially if we go to exchanging information between vehicles that have that are adjacent and have different views of the lanes.
By the way, that's listed as one of the 9 too.
Right.
So you're correct in saying I think we could get pretty good information. However, it may be that an algorithm that figures that out explicitly may turn on whether it's patentable or not.
Okay.
And that's why I want to include it.
Okay. All right. Good.
Part of my job is to try to get you a patent. And, maybe it's not quite as broad or quite as strong as you want, but, there's a lot of advantage in having it anyway. It gets published and you can claim it, and you can talk about it in shows, and you can sell it. And even if it is a little bit weak in the sense that somebody might be able to work around it, somebody who's trying to implement that is not really going to want to have to work around it. They're just going to want to buy the thing and be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So that's why it would be nice. So I'm agreeing with Bruce that it would be nice to have a picture that sort of shows the number of lanes, let's say 4, and indicates where the vehicle is. And I'm sure, Tommaso, you can come up with an elegant way to do that on a little cell phone screen.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
And by the way, if it's showing the wrong lane, the driver may be able to just touch the display, basically correcting the wrong information.
Right.
And there's an advantage to that, because if the vehicles are exchanging information and it's kind of marginal, and one vehicle says, no, I'm definitely in this lane, I mean, he's not just marking himself, he's marking everybody in front of him and everybody left and right of him too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then on the speed, I might sketch this out today, Tommaso, before you get to work tomorrow morning. My preference would be for not the target speed in big numbers, but actually the speed delta in big numbers, and then the target speed and the current speed are sort of, that's the minor information.
So Bruce, I like the target speed better, but you're the inventor and we can argue about it. But I'm also going to point out that there's no patentable difference between those. So I'm tempted to just leave what he's got, because the fewer changes, the less he's billing you, the less I have to deal with it.
Okay.
I mean, if you're very unhappy about it, you're the inventor and you can call whatever you want.
Okay, no, these are just patent drawings. They're not for application drawings. If you say there's
exactly.
no
I think that's an important distinction. You talked about doing videos and other stuff, and I really think that conceptually you should completely separate out the drawings and videos that you're going to use to explain this to someone than for the patent, because patent drawings are just so limited and so perverse.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, good. Good. So it sounds like
You can't take advantage of them, but I'm saying conceptually you should picture them as a completely different production.
okay, great. Well, then it sounds like we're all but done with the patent drawings. Tommaso, just for ease of access, could you put them in a Dropbox and then mark the ones that are essentially for the patent, and then
Okay.
I'll go through final review on them, as they get integrated into the patent.
Okay. Okay, I'll do.
It would also be good to serialize everything the way we've done before, just so that we've got all of your entire body of work. But then,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think we're done. Then with the drawing aspects, and I know if you have more questions, Kim, about claims with regard to this, and
What? Not at the moment. I think Friday. My target date is Friday to get you guys some stuff to review.
okay. And then you don't think that we should do separate diagrams for surface streets or non-cloverleaf type intersections, because you just see this as trivial extensions?
Right. Exactly.
But on the
I don't use the word freeway. I use the word roadway, and at some point I talk about freeways, expressways, and potentially any roadway. Entry ramps are kind of entry ramps, even if it's just a signalized four-way intersection.
And then when we're talking about HOT vehicles, it's vehicles, not cars. It could be buses. It could be
Right. That's exactly right. You use the word vehicles. It's just broader.
Eventually road trains.
And I also define driver as either a human or an autonomous program.
Right.
It's a little odd. You're allowed and encouraged to define your own vocabulary. And so for clarity, you can do stuff like have a driver actually be software, and the limits on that are a little perverse. You're allowed to redefine any word so long as your redefinition is not, quote, grossly abhorrent. So rather than talking about, a driver or an autonomous vehicle software control package, you just use the word driver and at one point define that as inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And for example, vehicle, I can define vehicle to include bicycles, joggers, and skiers.
All right, that sounds pretty general. And then with the surface streets, this systems would interact with continuous flow green wave signaling. The ways in which that occurs are fairly obvious. I'm just not clear what level of obviousness is actually, so obvious that it's not worth including in the patent, where we stop diagramming traffic flow situations.
Well, that's always a bit of a guess, but the ones that are really obvious, you can kind of tell. I mean, very often they're not written, that way. And to be perfectly honest, the reason is that clients like to see lots of claims. And so, clients write 61 claims and the attorney's like, fabulous, I'll put in 61 claims. And then, of course, you pay a claims overage fee and and the client is happy and the attorney gets to bill more and they really don't have a good legal basis. You know, when you see a patent that has exactly 20 claims, that's an attorney doing his job.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
that's where you hit. You know, 20 is the maximum until you hit an overage fee, and for international, it's 15.
Aha. Okay. All right. How many claims would you expect on this one?
Well, 20, but you know, often I just end up with 12. You know, it's not worth. To me, it's not worth putting in some extra claims that aren't really valuable, and you are required to do a drawing for every element of every claim. So, you know, claims that don't have a lot of value, just run up the bill.
Okay. All right. Good.
Okay, guys.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Tommaso. Nice drawings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In the future, any text you put on a drawing should be Helvetica.
Oh, okay.
That's what everybody uses, and there's kind of a stupid reason, which is that there's a minimum height on text, and
Oh.
so what everybody does is they use compressed Helvetica and all caps, because that way you hit the minimum. Where if you use upper and lowercase, you know, you run into the problem that examiners will whine at you that the lowercase doesn't meet the minimum height, which is of course ridiculous. But I've had that happen. I asked one time, I said, you know, I used Photoshop for this, and this font meets exactly the spec, plus about 5% over. I said, how do you guys measure the height of the text? And he came back and he said, I have no idea. And he's the guy who rejected it. So, you know,
Okay.
they gotta play their game.
Yeah, I actually asked him also to take the text off of the diagram so that we could actually make that a final adjustment.
Well, leave the numbers on there because I've already used them.
Yeah, you leave the numbers on, and then
Okay.
we can always tag text on it
Later.
later. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Good.
Yeah, text and drawings is you either want none or you want it to be very short and very clear.
Right.
And partly you have to make the text so darn large that you don't really have room to put any explanation anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, the number is, I think, 0.32 inches height on an 8.5 by 11 or A4, and if you think about it, that's just ridiculously high.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, are we done?
I think so.
I mean, don't let me rush you.
Okay.
But...
Yep. No, I think
Okay,
we're done.
thanks. Have a nice evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, Tommaso,
All
have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Bye for now.